Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. With the calendar now in October, the days are getting shorter and the nights are getting cooler, but there is still plenty to do and a lot to be aware of when it comes to our gardens and home landscapes. So for some timely tips on a number of topics, I'm joined by two of our frequent contributors from the University of Vermont. It's always a pleasure to welcome back horticulturist Leonard Perry and the Director of Plant Diagnostic Clinic, Ann Hazelrigg. Thanks so much for coming in.
Sure. Thank you, Judy.
We'll start with Leonard. Now you have some plants to tell us about.
I always bring plants and pretty flowers. So first we'll start with the pretty flower here. This is a Rudbeckia, Black-Eyed Susan. You may not recognize it. It looks very different because the petals are actually tubular. They're called quilled. They kind of open out at the end there.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the one called Henry Eilers, E-I-L-E-R-S. It's named after a nurseryman in Illinois who found this native plant growing along a railroad. And this gets about 6 feet high. It does tend to flop a bit. If you don't want that, you can get Little Henry. And this is Little Henry here. You see the flowers are a little bit smaller and the plant is only about 4 feet high. It tends to flop a little bit as well. What I'm going to try next year is cutting these back halfway early in the summer to see if that'll make them bushier and not flop. So a trick there. Now the second one I brought here is actually a shrub. It's a viburnum. This is the American cranberry bush. A lot of people may know it. Cranberry bush viburnum. You can see why with these beautiful red fruits. With a great spring we had, things flowered well, everything is fruiting well, and beautiful, you know, burgundy foliage, kind of with the 3 points to it here, but the berries are just stunning and gorgeous. Birds like them. One of the things, there are several viburnums out there, different ones you can choose. They get a problem called a viburnum leaf beetle, which really early in the season will chew up the leaves, strip the plant. This one, luckily, they've not found it, knock on wood. And there are some that are more resistant. You can go to Cornell University. They have a great website that lists the varieties that are more resistant. And then finally, I brought another shrub. So when I got this year, it's called a bush honeysuckle. It's about a medium-sized shrub. And the thing I like about it is small flowers in summer, which aren't that conspicuous, but white flowers. But then this time of year, it turns these beautiful oranges and reds. The bush honeysuckle, this one's actually called Kodiak Orange. It's a new variety, but you can see the lovely colors. Imagine a 4 to 5 foot bush just covered with these colors. So great plants for fall effect and color.
Nice addition. Now, Ann, what's happening in the Plant Diagnostic Clinic this time of year?
Well, it hasn't slowed down too much yet, unfortunately. You know, I feel like as a plant pathologist, I'm always sort of looking for that first killing frost because then things really
slow down.
Yeah, right. I always feel bad about that. But we've got still a lot of samples coming in because it's harvest time. A lot of home gardener questions still. So once that first frost comes, it'll slow down.
What are some of the problems or issues that you're seeing in late summer?
Well, a big problem this summer, and I've mentioned it before, but it's worth mentioning it again because we've gotten so many phone calls about it, is all the defoliation we're seeing in crab apples this year. It's been so severe that trees have dropped their leaves because they become so infected with a couple of fungus diseases, apple scab, cedar apple rust. And so people are concerned, oh, has my crabapple died? And no, they haven't died. Check for the bud set. There's probably good bud set there. But what homeowners want to do now is rake up these leaves this fall because that's where the spores of the fungus overwinter. So rake those up, destroy them, and then prune the tree this winter so you really open it up to air and light. And so then if we have another rainy summer, the leaves will dry off quicker and you'll have less disease.
Okay, great. I know there's another picture too that you want to take a look at.
Yeah, the other problem we heard from a lot of growers is I've had a great blueberry crop, but all of a sudden my blueberries just turned soft. And this is another, I mentioned it before too, but we had so many calls and emails about this. It's these blueberries were infested by a very small fruit fly larva called the spotted winged Drosophila, and you can see the little larvae.
Those little white ones, yeah.
Little maggots. We try to call them larvae because that sounds better. But, but the fly lays an egg in the ripening fruit, and these larvae develop in there, and then they soften the fruit because fungi follow in after that larvae. You know, they've created a wound. And
are blueberries the only berries affected?
No, it affects any late season berry. So blueberries, raspberries, grapes. So home gardeners
raspberries. Ooh.
Yeah, so this, if you want to test if your fruit has this pest in it, there's something called the salt test, where you mix a cup of salt to a gallon of water, which you can, use a smaller proportion of that or a smaller amount of that. But you put that over your berries, and then mash them a little bit, wait a half an hour, and then you'll be able to see those larvae on the right-hand side. You can see with the naked eye. It would help if you had a little magnifying glass, but those are the larvae. So that's what you would be looking for. And I suspect, it's throughout the state, and I suspect if you had late raspberries or late blueberries, that was your problem.
Can you eat the fruit?
Yes, you can. Sure.
A little extra protein.
It is extra protein. Yeah. And I can attest that once you make sorbet out of the fruit, you just don't even see them. So, but
that's a cooking tip for you.
Yeah, right. Home gardeners are lucky because you can use netting to exclude these pests. It's harder for commercial growers because they have bigger acreages. But if you've only got a few berry plants, you can use this small hold netting. And there are a couple places you can purchase it, and we'll put that information on the Master Gardener website.
And when should you put that on?
You should put it on just before those berries start to ripen.
Okay.
And then seal it at the base so they can't get in under it.
All right, well, speaking of critters, a friend of mine, Kyla, shared a few pictures and asked if you could confirm the identity of this insect that she's had in her garden.
Yeah, that's one of the hornworms. They're big. They can grow up to 4 inches. They're amazing. They feed mainly on...
Can't miss that.
Yeah, Solanaceae plants, tomato, tobacco. This one happens to be the tobacco hornworm because it's got those white stripes with black.
Oh, okay.
And then a red tail. Red horn on its abdomen.
Crazy looking.
I know, they're awesome. But the tomato hornworm looks similar, but it has sort of a blue horn. But they both do a lot of damage. That one I can't tell. That might.
So would you just pick them off?
You pick them off. And in fact, if you see little white cocoons on their backs, that's a wasp that's sort of attacking the
So
leave it. Let those develop, and that'll build up in your garden. Yeah, hand pick them. I throw them. Other people squish them. They're the size of a small puppy. I cannot squish anything like that. So.
Oh my God, sounds like a horror show.
I know.
All right, Leonard, let's move on to the pot that you brought.
Something that you don't squish.
Yeah.
So, no, this is a little bit more fun, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe not for Ann, but these are tulip bulbs. And this is the time of year, of course, you're planting spring bulbs, putting them in now that it's getting cooler. And what I like to do is save some out, buy some particularly, and sometimes they say for forcing, that's the term, to get them to bloom indoors in winter. So I'll pot 4, as you see here. I've planted them with the tips near the surface. I'll put a little more soil in, but I wanted to leave them exposed so you could see that there are 4 in here. One of the tricks with the tulips is they have a flatter side, and if you put that near the outer of the pot, the leaf goes over the pot. So but fill it up with soil, moisten it a little bit. 3 months at cold, like in the refrigerator, 35 to 45 is the temperature that these really need to cool. So daffodils, tulips, hyacinths, crocus are ones that all work well. You see them in stores a lot in the winter.
Right.
Then pull them out in about 3 months, put them in the warmth, they'll start to grow, and you can have flowers. So simple as that, it's great to have some of that color. You really starve for color in winter.
Exactly. That's beautiful.
So think about it now, pot up some to force.
Now you also brought some garlic.
I brought another bulb, and this is garlic. A lot of people know this from the store, but this is actually seed garlic, it's called. You don't want to use for planting table garlic or garlic you get at the store. A lot of times it's been treated so it won't sprout. But this is some that we grew this last year. There are some different types actually of garlic. It's not just one type. Music is a really good one. Georgian white, Georgian crystal and German white. This is actually one of those, and you can see it has a bulb, and I've taken out a clove. As people know that use garlic, it has these cloves. This is what you plant. Okay. This will grow, and by middle of next summer make one of these. So for 1 clove you get, and you may pay maybe $3 if you buy one of these, but you'll get for each one of these, say if you have 6 cloves, big fat ones here, you'll get 6 bulbs. So it really does save you some money in the long run. It's a lot of fun. You can grow some different varieties. So with garlic, what you want to do, this is the tip up here. And so anytime October is a good time to plant these. Put them about 2 inches deep in the soil. and about 4 inches apart in the row, with rows about a foot apart. And then you don't have to do anything else really. Fix the soil well first, maybe add some compost, but wait till spring to fertilize. Put some straw on, pretty deep, weed-free straw, about 6 inches deep. That'll help keep the soil warm, help protect them in the winter. And then they'll root, and then they'll start growing first to next May. And then you can put a little fertilizer on then, and next July you can harvest a lot of your own garlic.
Sounds great. Now, Anne, you have a few more topics that you want to share with us.
Yeah, I got to do something fun. I got invited by Vijay Komai, who works for Bartlett Tree Experts, to attend their client days, and it was in Charlotte, North Carolina. They have a big research lab because they're a national company. So we went down for 2 days and went to workshops, and they have 350 acres of an arboretum that's just beautiful. And this is a whole, had a whole display of espaliered trees and shrubs, this crepe myrtle and I think a magnolia, a blue atlas cedar, and I love that kind of thing. I'd love to do more. Yeah, it's so pretty. And then this was another cool thing. I learned a new word. It's called pleaching.
Pleaching.
These are pleached carpinus, which is a hornbeam, but they grow these trees, they line them out like 4 feet apart, and then they train them to be this arch.
Oh, nice.
And it was just beautiful. So those are pleached hornbeams. They also did a lot of, we had, half-hour workshops all throughout the day with these experts. And this was a demonstration of what happens when you have girdling roots in a tree.
Right.
If you look at trees in the landscape and they look like a telephone pole just going into the ground, that indicates that you've planted that tree too deeply. You should see a root flare.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, if you dig away from a tree like that, this is what you see. You see those roots encircling the tree, and it'll live fine for 5, 6, 7 years, and then all of a sudden it'll start dying back. And they were demonstrating that the time to deal with these girdling roots is when if you buy trees in containers, pull them out of the container, take a look at them, make sure you don't have girdling or encircling roots then. And if you do, look for a plant that doesn't have that, but you can really, I have a next slide where they were just showing when you take these plants out of the container, you do not have to be careful with them at all. This guy took a hatchet and cut up all these roots, up and down, just to sort of free them. He shook them out. So you can really sort of be very aggressive with them and then plant them, and then they'll be less likely to cause these girdling roots.
I think we had a couple more slides too to get to.
Yeah, it was really neat there because they had all these replicated trials. I was really impressed with their research there. This was a replicated trial of different mulches and different ground treatments, and then they would monitor the soil temperature under these and see which was best for a hot climate. And the other replicated trial, they had several, but this was one just on sidewalks and the size of a tree planting hole. So it was really good. They have great research, and then they can pass that on, I think, to their reps around the country.
Awesome. Now, Leonard, the past several shows you've talked about the botanical gardens in Montreal and the Lantern
Festival. I went on a
Festival.
little trip too. Took a group of people up to Montreal to the Botanic Gardens like we do each year, a bus tour. And this is what we saw, Chinese dragons. This year that was the theme. They're celebrating their 5 elements of Chinese culture and gardens, water being one, and the dragon being associated with the water. The cranes, the birds around it, symbolizing the longevity in China, and in this case, the longevity of the relationship between the sister cities of Shanghai and Montreal. So this event runs at the Montreal Botanic Gardens at Chinese Lanterns until the end of October. So well worth the visit by day and by night when these silk lanterns are lit up. And they have other parts of the garden all lit up as well.
I know you have information on that on your website and
I
other
do,
information
on my
as well.
website and pictures from past years in the gardens, perrysperennials.info, Perry's Perennial pages, and I've got a lot more on some of these topics we touched on today and much more.
And also, too, Anne, how can UVM help Vermont gardeners?
Yeah, always call the Master Gardener Helpline. We still have gardeners there to answer the phone, so call anytime.
Terrific. Well, thank you both for joining us today.
Thanks.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again across the fence.